Okay. Today, my guest is Professor Yongsun Paik. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Yongsun as a person, Professor Paik as a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally as a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Yongsun Paik is a professor of IB at Loyola Marymount University. He also is the director of the Center for Asian Business and director of Center for International Business Education. Yongsun's research is on international human resource management, business ethics, cross-border M&As, joint ventures, and East Asian business management. Yongsun is an editorial board member for the Journal of World Business and the Thunderbird International Business Review, and former president of Association of Korean Management Scholars. He has published 3 books and over 60 articles in major international business and management journals. He received the Fulbright Senior Specialist Program Award, Korea Foundation Fellowship Award, Carnegie Bosch Institute Research Grant Award, Best Paper Award from the AOM, and Best Paper Award from the U.S. Association for Small Business Entrepreneurship National Conference, among others. Thank you, Yongsun, for making time for us.
Thank you so much, Ilgas. It's a great honor to be selected, one of the interviewees. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
thank you. Yongsun, what did you want to become when you were a child?
Well, I wanted to become a House Speaker or Congressman. My father ran for the Korean Parliament twice, but unfortunately, he failed both times. So my childhood dream was to fulfill an unaccomplished dream for my father.
Wow. So, politics, are you still involved? Are you still following it, pursuing it?
Yes and no. I moved to the States almost 40 years ago. But, you know, Korea is still my mother country. They just had a presidential election not too long ago. So yes, I'm interested in politics, although my character and personality, I don't think I have a good qualification to become a good politician. So I think I made a right decision to become an academic instead of a politician. Yeah.
Okay, can you remember the earliest moment of awareness between domestic versus foreign?
Sure. I was born in Seoul, Korea, a couple of years after the end of Korean War. So at the time, it was quite common to see GIs, American Army or Army Forces, riding a jeep or a truck on the street. So I still vividly remember my childhood. I used to chase, you know, these vehicles asking for a chewing gum or chocolate. And I quickly noticed that they look different and speak a different language. At the time, of course, I didn't know that it was in English. So I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. I already aware of the, you know, for the first time, there were people who had a different skin color and also speak different languages. You probably know Korea is a very homogeneous society. So it was a very strange experience for me.
Interesting. Yeah. How did you choose academia?
You mean the IB scholar?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always interested in learning foreign languages. I was introduced to English for the first time in my junior high school. It was a lot of fun to learn a different language. At the time, actually, in Korea, there was a TV station called American Forces Korean Television Network, which stands for, you know, mainly for these American forces. And I often watched a big sport event like Super Bowl and World Series through AFKN. So I became a huge Dallas Cowboy fans. I watched that football for the first time. And I didn't know that why it was called a football, because most of the time, you know, they do not use feet. Instead, they use hands. So it was quite interesting. That might be that one of the reasons actually that later I chose University of Texas for my master's degree study in Latin American studies. Before I learned English, actually, that I had to learn Chinese. I mean, the Chinese, the characters or the letters, not conversational Chinese in my childhood. Because at the time, a lot of Korean newspapers, you cannot read the newspapers unless you learn Chinese character. Then I learned German for 3 years in my high school. After graduating from college, I also learned Spanish and French. So at one point of time, I even considered pursuing my career as a diplomat. After I graduated from college, I joined the Export-Import Bank of Korea as a country economist. As part of my work, I developed my interest in Latin America and also international political economy. And I was lucky because I was selected as one of the recipients of IT&T Fellowship at the time to pursue my master's degree in Latin American studies. So I would say that, given my language proficiency and area study background, professional work experience at Korea Exim Bank, it was not really a difficult decision for me to choose international business as a field of my study. Although, to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't know much about the contents of IB.
Perfect. Something that is not on your CV that people might find interesting about you, like a hobby, like something personal.
Sure. I'm pretty good at sports and music, and I played almost every sport that used a ball, such as ping pong, or table tennis, golf, tennis, baseball, basketball. You name it. And I also like singing and playing guitar. I've been learning and playing acoustic guitar since I was a freshman in college. So I guess I played probably that, more than or close to 50 years. I don't know whether you play golf or not. Do you play golf? And actually that I had a par 4 hole-in-one 5 years ago. If you play golf, that you know how difficult it is. And I know it happened only once in PGA Tour history. I'm not sure even Tiger Woods has ever done this. So this is quite a special achievement. And I have a first cousin, Yongsun Paik, who played in the NHL, National Hockey League. And he was a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins who won the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions in the early 1990s. And he's currently a director of South Korean national hockey team. So I'm a member of pretty, good athletic family.
Yeah, yes, in the genes. This is perfect. If you stopped being an academic, what would you do? What's the second best career path for you?
Yeah, I remember there were 2 critical moments in my life which influenced my career path. The first time came after I graduated from college. I was admitted to the Graduate School of Simultaneous Interpretation of Korea University of Foreign Studies. But my parents didn't want me to become an interpreter. As an interpreter, you always follow someone, kind of secondary person in their view. So you cannot become a principal, but kind of an agent all the time. So I decided to start my career, as I said earlier, at the Export-Import Bank of Korea as a country economist. And 5 years after I worked at the Export-Import Bank of Korea, I quit my job and moved to the States to pursue my master's degree in Latin American Studies at UT Austin. During my master's degree program, I learned a lot about development economics. So after finishing the master's program, I was faced with a decision-making whether I want to continue to pursue my academic study or change my career and work for the World Bank. There was a program called the Young Professionals Program, YPP. It is a 2-year leadership development program at the start of a 5-year employment contract with the World Bank. So, I could have pursued either a simultaneous interpreter, or maybe that I could have ended up with working as an economist at the World Bank.
Interesting. So this 5-year program, this is after you get in the company, the World Bank, they basically give you a 5-year contract. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's the 5-year contract. For the first 2 years, actually, you start the program in the Washington, D.C., right? And intensive training on the job programming and learning all these fundamentals of leadership and development operations across institutions. So that was very attractive. And I think that there's an age limit, usually under 30 years old. So I was almost 30 years old. So I was pretty ambivalent at the time whether, this would be a good career track down the road, or maybe I better pursue the Ph.D. degree in international business.
I see. Regrets in life. What is one thing you wish you would have done or done differently?
Oh, I see. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I enjoy playing sports and singing, but I'm not good at sports which do not use a ball, such as swimming and biking. I wish I had learned swimming and biking in my childhood, and I injured my knee about 10 years ago when I was playing tennis. I think that for my age, probably it would be better to bike or swim than keep playing tennis or golf. Since biking and swimming gives less pressure on your knees. So that's one thing. And another thing, I wish I had taken a voice or singing lesson when I was young, so that I could have become a better singer. So those are the two things I think that I regret.
Perfect.
Yeah.
For the sake of time, I'll switch to the research portion.
Okay.
Say you're stranded in a small village, locals don't know anything about you, they're curious what you do for a living. How do you explain your research to people who don't read JIBs regularly?
Well, I would say I'm a person who's interested in getting to know and learning about different people and try to help them succeed individually as well as at a corporate setting when they move to another country or work with people from different countries. So my main research areas cover various issues related to international HRM. In the early days of my academic career, I've done a lot of research on expatriate management, including staffing, training, compensation, and repatriation. And actually, two of my most cited papers investigate the MNC's ability to control international subsidiaries using expatriates, and also how to improve repatriation management. More recently, my research interest became much broader, including business ethics, gender issues in international entrepreneurship, and informal networks. My informal networks research also related to improving the effectiveness of expatriates. Global managers are expected to be able to effectively resolve ethical dilemmas when conducting business across borders. I have examined the influence of globalization on national, organizational cultures and their impact on ethical decision-making. One of my recent papers explored the influence of cultural convergence, divergence, and cross-vergence on business ethics. It is a comparative study between the US and China that investigates cross-cultural differences in managerial decision-making and the associated moral philosophy. So my research doesn't really focus exclusively on a specific topic. Most IB scholars are known for their expertise in a very narrowly focused field or the topic. I guess I'm kind of easily bored with the same or similar research topics, so I have recently worked together, and even with my marketing colleagues on the topic of consumer animosity. So, anything that interests in the people, I would say that I'm willing to take a research.
Perfect. Things that are neglected, forgotten, omitted contexts, topics, concepts in IB research, things that we need to think more about?
I see. I would say probably the geopolitics. As an area study major, as I said, my master's degree in Latin American studies and also former country economist, I think that we have to probably better understand the geopolitics as the context of our research. In order to understand the geopolitics, you have to understand the history of the region or nations. For example, you can't understand the war in Ukraine or denuclearization of Korean Peninsula unless you understand the historical backgrounds. I recently contributed a paper to AIB Insights special issue on IB education. One of the main contributions of the IB, I think, is to broaden the perspectives about business, not just to confine to a specific discipline. I know many of us have used the institutional framework in our research. However, nation states and role of government has not been studied enough. So I think geopolitics is one of the one. And another reason why I think it's important to learn history is because it helps to understand the culture much more deeply. I always tell my students, in order to understand culture, you have to learn history. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand people. If you don't understand people, you won't be able to understand culture. So I think the business is all about people. So I hope that we should do more research on people.
Perfect. About trends in IB research from the past, when you were going through the program, to the current one, especially after COVID, after the pandemic. What's going to be the next phase? What will we see along the way?
Okay. Well, DEI and sustainability, I believe, will continue to draw attention from IB scholars because they reflect the current social issues facing many different countries. And young people, millennials, Generation Z, they're very passionate about social justice issue. So I believe that this will be one of the major topics that a lot of IB scholars will continue to tackle. And another thing is technology is profoundly changing the nature of our work. So companies redefine how and where different tasks are to be carried out. From international HRM perspective, the COVID-19 health crisis and lockdown, as you know, it increased the remote workers. Some of them became so-called digital nomads for the first time in their life. That means what? They can work anywhere, anytime. So digital nomad, it refers to an individual who work remotely using information and communication technology. It also means that, we probably have to study more about the contingency workforce, how we're going to evaluate them and compensate them. I recently read an article, a country like Finland is using a very creative approach to recruiting global talent. Finland offered them a chance to try living in Helsinki for 90 days. More than 5,000 people apply for the, only the 15 opening positions to receive a relocation package offered by the Helsinki Business Hub. So all these phenomena, I believe, that will have an impact on our research on global mobility. We'll probably see the continued reduction in companies assigned expatriates and increase in self-initiated expats. So some of these expats will convert to so-called the expatpreneurs. And I believe this will be the new emerging field that bridges entrepreneurship and IB. So at least this is my take from an international HRM perspective.
Thank you. About growing junior faculty, growing PhD students, about advice and mentoring, what were the important skills that you think is needed for being successful in the field?
Okay. From my own experience, speaking of research, the most difficult skills I had to develop was writing. And particularly, as an immigrant scholar, it was not easy to develop these skills, the writing skills, which is good enough to, accept it in the top journals. So I think that, critical thinking and writing skills are essential to conduct a solid research, and particularly in order to publish in the top journals. And also, I hope they will be able to develop communication skills. It required to become a good teacher. Specifically, I think that they have to develop research ideas, skills to develop research ideas into the intriguing research questions. We all know the intellectual curiosity or inquisitiveness should be the driving force. LMU, we don't have a PhD program. So I don't know much about the PhD students, in recent years who graduated from top research universities, but I can share my experiences with the junior faculty colleagues who often apply for the research grant. I often notice they don't clearly articulate research questions. You need to carve out most intriguing research questions and develop research framework and adopt appropriate methodology. In other words, you have to know the whole research process. Otherwise, it will be difficult to do something substantial if you don't see the whole picture of your research. And another thing I like to mention is, it's much easier for the junior faculty to analyze already collected data set rather than collecting primary data through observation. I hope that PhD students and junior faculty, they can develop skills to conduct more deductive research. The inductive research. They're already familiar with deductive research, which start with an existing theory, develop hypotheses, then collect data to test hypotheses. And I hope that they will be able to develop skills to do more exploratory research for creating innovative and heterogeneous knowledge. So it would be great if they can also develop how to conduct inductive research.
Perfect. And you said you don't have a PhD program, but you're reviewing for these grants. You see the young faculty come apply for these things. What are some of the most common mistakes and shortcomings in the applications that you see, that you say, don't do it? What's the common mistakes that you see?
As I said earlier, I think they are not really clear-cut about the intriguing research questions. They have many ideas, but they are not able to sort out one or two really intriguing research questions. So to me, once you figure out the most interesting and intriguing research questions, that's already halfway done. But a lot of times I saw these junior faculty members that they're struggling with to make it more concrete and narrowly focused and intriguing research questions. And
okay. And Yongsun, after the pandemic, after the COVID 2.5 year shutdown, how is this going to impact international HRM? We got used to dealing with everything on Zoom. Expatriates has always been, over the past 10 years, has been declining. How is what's your prediction on the trajectory of international HRM research?
I think I already mentioned to some extent, earlier I mentioned that we'll probably see the continued reduced number of expats sent by these multinational corporations because of the opportunity offered by many different companies. The companies can hire many people remotely. For example, Chinese and Mexicans and French, they don't have to come to the US. They can still work closely online with the headquarters in the US. So one of the things I expect will be that we're going to continue to see that the more self-initiated expats, just like the case example I share with you, a lot of countries now offering an incentives for these the professionals. They can either work at home or they can come over to the host country and stay there briefly, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, try to understand better whether they can continue to work with these people in an unfamiliar territory. So a lot of research on for example, expat adjustment is kind of disappearing. So I think that we'll see that increase the research in this, the new virtual global mobility and how you work with the people from multiple locations without actually physically being there. So we'll see that, how you can effectively work with people from different cultures online and remotely and digitally. And that will be one of the, I think that key subject of the HRM in the future.
Perfect, thank you. Well, for the sake of time, last question. What's the question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Well, probably I would say that work-life balance, and particularly the young generation, many of them, they do have dual careers. So both spouses, they work together. In the past, again, if I go back to the IHRM, there has been some research that the expat adjustment, because the one spouse stay at home, but again, now you don't have to do it. But at the same time, we will see that the increased number of people staying at home and work together. So how are you going to balance, right, between your work and your family matters would be that probably one of the most challenging, I guess, that a lot of companies has to provide some benefits, and otherwise you won't be able to recruit the globally talented people. We already heard that top companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, they are facing the problem to bring their workers back to the physical place of work. So I would say that is one of the key challenges to many people.
Even our conferences is like that too. I mean, think about it. Traveling to overseas locations, it's very difficult to justify it for a dean to say, you need $2,000 to go to that conference, $5,000 to go to that conference, if it is overseas, especially now that there is Zoom, which is free.
Yeah,
right.
You're absolutely right. So that is why I think that this year the AIB is hosting conference, both in person and also remotely. So yeah. I think that a lot of conferences will be hybrid form in the future, right?
True. Thank you so much, Yongsun. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.